Today, we're going to be talking a bit more about fashion watches because that tends to be what people are interested in, on my channels at least. And we're trying to list some general pros and cons of these, maybe more specifically to do with the really cheap end drop-shipped fashion watches, because there is a lot of cons, admittedly, about them. Although there may potentially be some pros to them. We don't want to come across as too negative on this channel, so we'll try and come up with some pros, which Sam's going to go through. He's going to attempt to go through some pros, aren't you, mate?
I think I pulled the short straw here doing the pros, and this might hurt me a little bit, but I like to be objective on my channel as well. So I came up with the 5 pros for those kind of affordable dropship watches. The first one, of course, is that if you're on a limited budget, you can get the look of an expensive watch because a lot of these fashion brands, they're trying to replicate more expensive watches. So if you're on a limited budget, you can get that look of an expensive watch from one of these kind of dropship watches, and obviously for a fraction of the price.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah, those sorts of watches, I'm presuming you're comparing these to like tens of thousands of pounds luxury watches.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get a very similar like Rolex look, or the one that we commonly think of, the minimalist watch, which was, is made by a very famous company called Namos, a German company. I think that design has been, dare I say, done to death, but it's certainly one that you can get from a dropshipper.
Definitely. Although I'm sure when we get to the negatives, we'll talk about how there is still some other alternatives that just have that edge in quality. They have the edge in heritage for sure. But we'll mention that one later. What's the next one that we've got on the list?
Yeah, so the next pro that I had was, when we think of a fashion watch, we do think of a lot of kind of quartz-based watches. You can get mechanical watches on these drop shippers. So one of my pros was that if you're not used to having a mechanical watch, you don't know whether you're going to like it or not if you're always used to quartz, buying one from one of these drop shippers is kind of like a good entry level in there. You're not kind of outlaying a lot of cost, really. You're saying, okay, well, I'll spend, $22 to $55, which is unbelievable price for a mechanical watch if you compare it to mechanical watches in general. So kind of if you're dipping your toe in the water with different types of watches or different styles or different sizes, going in on the cheaper end to start with to see whether you'll like it, I had that as a pro.
It's definitely a low-risk solution or a no-risk solution, really. Like some of these watches that are coming out from brands like Guanchin, like you can get an auto for like £20, which is unreal, isn't it? I mean, that's even cheaper than you could get the basic Seiko 5, albeit I'm sure we'll mention them later in this video because they're a different level when it comes to quality control. But it's definitely a good way to start off at. I mean, for instance, I think my first automatic watch was some form of fashion watch myself, which I guess shows that these guys are getting people into watches, which might be one of the pros on your list, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the next pro that I had was, it goes back to what we're kind of calling it like a fashion watch. Like typically a watch collector has 3 themes that they collect watches in, or there's probably more than that, but you've got your diver, you've got your dress watch, and then you've got some kind of sports watch like a chronograph or something like that. Whereas if you're wearing a watch to like complement your outfit or something like that, clearly I don't do that. A lot of watch collectors kind of wear the watch and then their outfit around the watch instead of the other way around. Whereas if you've got these kind of drop shippers, you can have a large watch collection that costs you next to nothing. And if you're not really bothered, I mean, because those quartz watches, they'll tell the time probably arguably better than a mechanical watch. So you can really have a big collection. So if you're really into fashion and you're wanting to dress your watch with your outfit, then I had that as another pro. That is clutching at straws, but that was my other pro.
Yes, and I suppose given the fact that loads of them are like super minimal, I guess technically they can still look half decent with lots of different clothes out there, which by the time this video goes up, I may have already released my Daniel Wellington alternatives video, which has got some other options that are arguably better that still offer that look, but nevertheless, it's still a good way that you can have you can either have lots of watches in lots of colors, or you can have like 1 or 2 super minimal watches that you could chuck with different clothes if you wanted to. Are there any more pros?
I've got two more pros, right? This next one is a bit kind of left field. I had that if you are looking to be, if you're really into watches and you're wanting to start working on watches, maybe mechanically, having like a handful of, mechanical watches you bought off Alibaba for, probably, less than $200. If you really wanted to learn how they work, you want to start taking them apart, you're at a zero risk there, aren't you? You want to take apart a movement, see how it works, see whether you like working on movements. It's a low, it's a low entry. It's not like another hobby where, like mountain biking where you've got to go straight out the and buy a really nice mountain bike, or racing, or water skiing or something like that. It's a low entry. If you're interested in mechanical watches, you might want to start working on them yourself, and you can take it apart. If you can't put it back together, big deal.
Fair play. That's actually quite a good one. I wasn't expecting you to say that, which I suppose is, like you say, it's a good way you can test it out. Even if you smash it to bits, you can even just replace it for another 10, 20 pounds sometimes. So, fair play.
Yeah, and then my last one is, and this is one of the ones that's also a pro and a con, but I had it as a pro as when you're looking at the mid-tier of watches. So if you're thinking luxury and then you're thinking of this mid-tier where, there's a lot of brands in there, a lot of micro brands, etc. I think being able to go on Alibaba and search for these watches, it really shines a light on the watch industry and actually how much it's costing them to manufacture these watches. And it allows you to put a lot of things into perspective about, wow, well, this is a mechanical watch that seems to be, especially with the Seagull movement in it, where, that Seagull movement is probably one of the most widely used Chinese movements. You can say, oh, well, this Seagull movement is in this watch, and it allows you to gauge and really understand what is value across the watch segment, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, with some of those cheap watches, you can go online, see that they're selling them for £15, £30 a piece, something like that. And they're still going to be making profit on that, like a substantial profit. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth them listing it and selling it, I suppose. So it's good for beginners, maybe to get a general idea of certain components, how much they're manufactured for, and then as a result, is it worth paying, 1,000,000% more markup that some companies have? Admittedly, not all, but some. I also thought of another one. I also thought, what if you needed a watch a fancy dress? Because they're super cheap watches, you can afford to get them covered in alcohol at a party or something as well. So
yeah, and you've not got to worry about like theft. And the other thing that I was going to have as a pro was, it's amazing, like the likes that we've talked about, Daniel Wellington and Movement. The marketing that they're doing, you would think that the Apple Watch doing so well would just basically finish off all these fashion brands, because those fashionistas are now going to more smartwatches. So for them to be like fighting the tide of that, I would say it was maybe not another pro, but it's certainly something that's interesting. Them to build this philosophy around a movement that is, it's largely not changed since the 70s, the quartz movement, but they're fighting off like technology, they're fighting off like an Apple Watch that's, almost like having a computer on your wrist. It's clever marketing from their side.
Oh, definitely. And I guess that's kind of an overall advantage that some of these companies exist in themselves, is the fact that it's getting people started into regular wristwatches, or when, like you say, they could just use an Apple Watch, which I know some of my friends are doing anyway, but at least they're keeping it somewhat alive, getting people started on it, especially my generation, a lot of people just don't even wear a watch at all. At least it's getting some people into that, and then maybe they can transfer into something better. And also they're pushing the boat forward when it comes to marketing. And some of these other companies, they really need to look at these brands and see, what are they doing? How can we replicate that success? Because it seemed to have taken an eternity to have adapted. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I know that the Omega just released this new deep, ultra deep or something. And the pictures they took of that on social media, they make it look monstrous. They could take a leaf out of, the Movement guy, sipping his coffee kind of, with...
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Or having the hand just up in the air, like they do this, don't they? And then they take a picture of it like that. Yeah, some of those, weird lifestyle images, rather than just making it look like it's for hyper celebrities like some of these brands do, or just making it look weird. I'm impressed that you've managed to put them pros together, to be frank. But now we need to move on to talk about the negatives of some of these watches, because in my opinion, I think in a lot of people's opinions that know somewhat about watches, these tend to not to be the most highly recommended in the watch community, let's put it that way. I think the first big one that we should talk about is the fact that people are paying a lot of money for not much watch. They're paying a huge markup, which is the case in other niches, like people can buy random products that have got big markups on, but in watches in particular, it's consistent, and some of the markups are ridiculous, aren't they?
Yeah, and we're going to get this comment in the comment section about, well, look at Rolex. Like, you know, Rolex is, you know, many times the value. The thing with Rolex, though, is it's one of the few watches that if you did save up for it, it is an investment. It's not like a car or like one of these fashion brands where you're buying it and that the money you've spent for it is the most expensive that watch will ever be. Like, it will never go up in value, whereas a Rolex is a true kind of like investment. So I would agree with that.
Definitely, yeah. On that point itself, talking about the value of it, for my recent video, I searched online to look at the value of these Daniel Wellingtons that were selling on eBay, for instance. People couldn't even sell them at all. Like they were all consistently going for under £20, and any completed listing that was over about £20 to £21 wasn't selling. Like, they were getting no bids, and you can see it. I filmed it on the video. And that's obviously a huge markdown. If they've bought it directly from the website, they've spent £200, so it's instantly losing 10 times its value, and they're not even able to barely sell it at £20, which means straight away it isn't a comparable situation in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into it too much on this one, but I have a Series B in my bonnet about Shinola, about how they, you know, they're exploiting good feelings against Detroit and blah, blah, blah. But one of the arguments I made against Shinola was that they're recreating these quartz movements in Detroit, and it's sort of the reverse argument. Like, why would you do that when you can buy them like made in China or Switzerland for a lot cheaper? So yeah, I would agree with that. You're not really getting value for money.
No, and to go along with that, kind of a second point is the low quality components as a whole. Like, how long are they going to last you? Are they going to last? For instance, with the Daniel Wellington, when I was filming the B-roll for it, which this is a real Daniel Wellington that I bought from their website for a video, I must say. I bought it and it still had the tags on. I haven't even taken the tags off because I refused to, because I'm not wearing that. And I was filming the B-roll for the video, and the strap is already deteriorating. Like, it looks like an old person's skin. It's like super wrinkled. It looks destroyed already, and I've barely used that watch. And that's just one external example. Like, you're going to have to replace the strap on it at some point if it doesn't fall apart, but that's not even talking about the insides of the watch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They're almost made to self-destruct, kind of like Mission Impossible or something, aren't they? You'd never get one repaired. I mean, there'd be no point.
The repair would be more expensive than the value of the watch. It's certainly frustrating. And then also you've got the fact that there are better quality alternatives elsewhere that you can get for way less money, like the one I'm wearing on my wrist right now, for instance. This is from Casio. This one comes with exactly the same movement inside, stainless steel construction still, but it has sapphire glass on the top. The strap's same, but it costs way less. Like, it's like, in the UK, you can currently get one of the versions for £39. £39.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've got a Casio from the 1970s that my granddad wore almost daily. Casio LCD watch. It's still going strong. You can see it in all of my like state of the watch collection reviews. So yeah, you can trust a Casio to last you a long time, even longer than you probably would think they would last.
Definitely, they'll last you longer than you think, and you can even buy multiple of them. So if you're someone that's really into like the fashionable looking watches and you don't want to spend more than £100, £200 on a watch for whatever reason, you can even just buy multiple colours to go with different outfits if you want, and it'll still be cheaper. You can literally buy like 4 or 5 of these, and it'll be cheaper than one Daniel Wellington that has worse specs. Like, it's unbelievable, the discrepancy. But also, obviously, you can get some automatics, which you're going to be familiar with, for a low cost, can't you? You can get a bunch of good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got entry-level, the entry-level Seiko watches, even anything that uses that Seiko NH35A movement. Some of the micro brands like Spinnaker, etc. They're knocking out some amazing quality, like mechanical watches for, you know, like you say. I mean, I reviewed a watch the other day that was used as Chinese seagull movement. It was a titanium case, and it was like sub $200.
It's amazing, especially with the titanium. It costs a lot to manufacture something even that size out of titanium. So it shows the value, doesn't it? And I guess a lot of people would consider objectively the automatic movement, whilst not so accurate, to be better than the quartz movement that's going into 99% of these fashion watches anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree
Definitely.
with that.
And then in terms of the rest of it, I kind of feel, as someone who bought fashion watches in the past, I mean, luckily I had the channel really at the time a few years back, so I got sent fashion watches for free. You get kind of the buyer's remorse with a lot of them, and you feel like a mug for falling for the luxury marketing that's plugged onto some of these. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, how can a watch that's manufactured for £2 be luxury?
Yeah, and gone are the days when you can't kind of research these things for yourself. It's not like you're buying it out of a catalogue and you've got no idea kind of how these are made. I mean, you've got countless YouTube videos, but also, like, you know, we mentioned, you can go on Alibaba and just do a search for the watch that you're interested in, and you can see like the true cost of what it's costing them to manufacture. So that you can't really kind of plead ignorance might be a strong word, but you can easily, within a couple of seconds, even on your phone, actually research watches now and see what you're getting.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And the more you learn, I guess, the easier it becomes. And to close out this video, you've got a lot more experience than me, I'd probably imagine, when it comes to different watches, especially those that are higher quality than the ones I typically cover on my channel, at least. Have you got any advice out there for people watching this video? Maybe if they're considering one of these sort of fashion watches, what would be your key pieces of advice for them to get a better deal when it comes to buying a watch?
I mean, it all depends on what your budget is and what you're thinking about a watch. If you want to keep a watch for a lifetime, if it's something you want to pass down, then you can get some really good watches, even around the 500, I'd say dollars, but even around the sort of, £400 to £500 mark. I mean, Hamilton are making some fantastic watches nowadays with, automatic movements in. They've got the ETA movements in. You can keep it, you can have them serviced for a long time. Some of the micro brand watches are pulling out some really quirky designs, like a Spinnaker. I've reviewed several on my channel. And then as you go kind of more up the chain, where the watches are becoming a higher quality, but you're not having to spend a lot on. We're not talking about like investing in Rolex and Omega and stuff like that. Although those watches are very good if you want in kind of a watch to invest in. So there's a whole host. You would just need to do your research, really decide what look you want. And if you decide ultimately that, yeah, I really want a fashion piece, a grab and go quartz, then you can't go wrong with a Swatch watch. I mean, some of the Swatch watches go up in value, and they're very similar, mechanics to some of these fashion brands. And, you can get a Swatch watch with a completely unique look that you would never see anybody else wearing.
Definitely, yeah. And no one will have been able to bag the same watch for £2 off AliExpress. We'll link to the other half of the video on his channel in the description, so make sure you go and check that out and subscribe over there for some more awesome watch videos.